Jake Morrison pushed the yellow cleaning cart down the long white hallway. His worn boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The wheels of the cart squeaked a little as he moved. He had walked this same path every day for 3 years. 3 long years of cleaning floors and emptying trash cans on the biggest space station in the galaxy. Nexus Prime was huge. It floated in space like a giant metal city. Ships from all over the galaxy came here to trade and talk. The station had thousands of aliens living and working inside it. There were the tall Valdorians with their shiny silver skin. There were the Zephyrians who looked like walking crystals. There were dozens of other alien races that Jake had learned to recognize over the years, but there were very few humans. Jake was one of maybe 50 humans on the entire station. Most of them worked in the lowest jobs. They cleaned toilets, served food, and fixed broken things. The aliens barely noticed they existed. To them, humans were just useful animals that could hold tools. Jake liked it that way. He wanted to be invisible. He wanted the aliens to ignore him completely. Every morning he put on his blue work clothes and picked up his mop. He kept his head down and his mouth shut. He did his job and went back to his tiny room at the end of each day. The other humans on the station thought he was just a quiet old man. They saw his gray hair and the lines on his face. They noticed how he walked with a slight limp. They figured he was probably a retired farmer or factory worker from some small human planet. Nobody asked him questions, and he never told them anything about his past. But Jake Morrison was not what he seemed to be. Under his loose work clothes, his body was covered in scars. There was a long white line across his chest from a plasma sword. There were round marks on his back from shrapnel. His left shoulder had been rebuilt with metal parts after a bomb blast. His hands looked soft now, but they still remembered exactly how to kill someone in 6 different ways without making a sound. The most dangerous thing about Jake was hidden under the collar of his uniform. On the back of his neck was a small tattoo. It showed an eagle sitting on top of 2 crossed swords. The tattoo was faded now, but it was still there. It was the mark of the Terran Special Forces, 7th Battalion. The Ghost Brigade. Most people in the galaxy had never heard of the Ghost Brigade. That was the point. They were soldiers who did not exist on paper. They fought battles that never happened. They won wars that were never declared. For 30 years, Jake had been one of the most dangerous men in human space. Then one day he had disappeared. The record said he died in a training accident. But really, he had just gotten tired of killing. Jake stopped his cart outside the big double doors that led to the council chambers. This was where the most important aliens on the station had their meetings. He was not supposed to listen to what they said. He was just supposed to clean the floors and stay quiet. But Jake had very good hearing. The Ghost Brigade had given him special training to pick up sounds that normal people could not hear. He pressed his ear card to the door scanner. The green light blinked and the doors opened. Jake pushed his cart inside and started mopping the floor near the back wall. There were 6 aliens sitting around a big oval table. They were talking in low voices, but Jake could hear every word. Biggest alien was Ambassador Korvac from the Hegemony Alliance. He looked like a giant lizard that walked on 2 legs. His scales were dark green and his eyes were bright yellow. The Hegemony controlled about a quarter of the galaxy. They had the biggest army and the most powerful ships. Most other aliens were afraid of them. Sitting across from Korvac was High Counselor Vex. She was a Valdorian with silver skin that seemed to glow in the light. The Valdorians were smart and sneaky. They usually stayed neutral in wars, but they sold weapons to both sides. Jake moved his mop slowly across the floor. He looked bored and tired, like an old man who just wanted to finish his work and go home. But inside his head, he was recording every word the alien said. "The timeline has been moved up," Korvac was saying. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Operation Cleansing Dawn will begin in 3 days instead of 7. High Counselor Vex nodded her elegant head. The human colonies on the outer rim have been growing too fast. If we wait much longer, they might become strong enough to fight back. Jake's hand tightened on the mop handle, but he kept his face blank. Operation Cleansing Dawn. He had never heard that name before, but he could guess what it meant. The hegemony was planning to attack human settlements. How many colonies are we talking about? Asked another alien. This one was short and fat with blue fur all over his body. Korvac pulled up a holographic map in the center of the table. Jake could see dozens of red dots scattered across the outer edge of the galaxy. Each dot was a human world. 57 colonies, Korvac said. Total population of approximately 2 million humans. We will strike all targets simultaneously. Complete destruction. No survivors. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2 million people. Men, women, children who had never hurt anyone. Families who had left Earth looking for a better life among the stars. Farmers and teachers and shop owners who just wanted to live in peace. The humans have no real military presence in that sector, High Counselor Vex said. A few patrol ships, maybe some old defense platforms. Nothing that can stop a proper battle fleet. What about the Terran Navy? Asked the blue-furred alien. Won't they respond? Korvac made a sound that might have been laughter. The Terran Navy is spread too thin. They have ships scattered across 1,000 worlds. By the time they can mount a rescue mission, there will be nothing left to rescue. Jake continued mopping the floor. He moved around the room like a ghost, cleaning up small messes and emptying trash bins. The aliens kept talking as if he was not even there. To them, he was just part of the background. A useful tool that happened to look like a person. The Council of Worlds will protest, of course, Vex said. Let them protest, Korvac replied. What can they do? The humans are weak. They have no real allies. The other races will make angry speeches and pass meaningless resolutions, but they won't risk war with the hegemony over a few million dead humans. Jake finished cleaning the floor near the table and moved to the windows. Outside he could see the vast emptiness of space. Somewhere out there, 57 human worlds were going about their daily business. People were getting married and having babies and building homes. They had no idea that in 3 days, death would come for them. From the stars, the meeting went on for another hour. The aliens discussed ship movements and supply lines and communication blackouts. They talked about the human colonies like they were discussing pest control. Jake listened to every word and remembered every detail. When the meeting finally ended, he gathered up his cleaning supplies and left the room. Jake pushed his cart back down the hallway toward the maintenance area. His mind was already working, making plans and calculating odds. For 3 years he had been content to mop floors and stay invisible. He had told himself that his fighting days were over. He had done his part for humanity and earned the right to disappear, but now innocents were in danger. 2 million people were going to die unless someone stopped the hegemony fleet. Jake Morrison had spent 3 years pretending to be a harmless old janitor. But deep down, he was still a ghost. And ghosts did not let their people die without a fight. As he reached the maintenance bay, Jake made his decision. The quiet life was over. It was time to remind the galaxy why the Ghost Brigade had never lost a war. Jake Morrison knew he needed help. He could not stop an entire alien fleet by himself. But on Nexus Prime, there was only one other human who had any real authority. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Linda Hayes, and she worked in the Human Affairs Office on Level 12. Jake had watched Linda for 3 years. She was smart and honest, but she had never been in a real fight. She spent her days filling out paperwork and helping human traders get permits. She had been in the Terran Navy once, but only as a communications officer. She had never fired a shot in anger or seen friends die in battle, but she was still human. And right now, Jake needed someone he could trust. The next morning, Jake took his cleaning cart to the Human Affairs office. He had cleaned Linda's office every Tuesday for 3 years. She barely looked up when he came in. She was always busy with her work, reading reports and typing messages on her computer. Linda Hayes was 42 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with Lieutenant Commander bars on her collar. The uniform was clean and pressed, but it looked like it had never seen real action. She kept a picture of her family on her desk. 2 kids and a husband back on Earth. She had taken this job to earn money for their college funds. Jake entered the office and started emptying the trash cans. Linda glanced at him for a second, then went back to her paperwork. She was reading a report about grain shipments from the farming colony on Kepler 4. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Jake moved around the office slowly. He dusted the shelves and cleaned the windows. He was waiting for the right moment. Finally, Linda got up to get a cup of coffee from the machine in the corner. As she walked past her desk, Jake deliberately bumped into her chair. The coffee cup flew out of Linda's hand and crashed onto her desk. Hot brown liquid splashed across all her papers. The computer screen was covered in coffee drops. Linda jumped back with a gasp. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," Jake said quickly. He grabbed cleaning supplies from his cart and started wiping up the mess. "I'm really sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to do that." Linda looked annoyed, but not angry. "It's okay," she said. "Accidents happen. Let me help you clean this up." As Jake mopped up the coffee, he leaned close to Linda. "Operation Cleansing Dawn," he whispered very quietly. 57 colonies, 3 days. Linda froze. Her hand stopped moving. She stared at Jake with wide eyes. "What did you just say?" Jake kept cleaning, but he whispered again. 2 million people are going to die. The hegemony is planning to attack all the Outer Rim colonies at the same time. Linda's face went pale. She looked around the office to make sure no one was listening. "How do you know this?" Jake finished cleaning the desk and stood up. For just a moment, his back straightened and his shoulders squared. Linda saw something in his gray eyes that made her heart skip a beat. It was the look of a man who had seen terrible things and made impossible choices. "I'm someone who mops floors," Jake said quietly. "But I used to be someone else. I need to make a phone call." That night, Jake went to Storage Bay 7 in the lowest level of the station. It was an old storage room that nobody used anymore. The aliens had forgotten it existed. Jake had been using it as his secret workshop for months. Inside the storage bay, Jake had built a small communication center. He had stolen the parts over many months, taking a wire here and a circuit board there. Nobody noticed when a janitor took old equipment that was going to be thrown away anyway. Jake had put it all together into a powerful radio that could send messages across the galaxy. Jake sat down at his homemade radio and started entering codes. The signal bounced from one relay station to another, jumping across space until it reached a small bar on Luna Station near Earth. In the bar, an old woman with steel gray hair was cleaning glasses behind the counter. The woman's radio crackled to life. She looked up from her work and walked over to answer it. "Phoenix Actual," Jake said into the microphone. The old woman's hands stopped moving. She had not heard that call sign in 8 years. "Go 7, she said. "We thought you were dead." "I got better, Kate," Jake replied. "I need help. The hegemony is moving against the Rim colonies. They call it Operation Cleansing Dawn. They're going to hit 57 worlds in 3 days." Admiral Kate Sullivan set down her glass and walked to the back room of her bar. She had been the head of Terran Special Operations for 20 years before she retired. She knew Jake Morrison better than anyone else in the galaxy. If he was calling for help, The situation was very bad. "Jake, the Ghost Brigade was shut down 8 years ago," Kate said. "Most of the team is dead or scattered. I don't know where they are." "Then find them," Jake said. His voice was calm but hard. 2 million. People, Kate. Families with children. They don't have any weapons to fight back with." Kate was quiet for a long moment. She was thinking about the old days when the Ghost Brigade was the most feared unit in human space. They had been 12 of the best soldiers who ever lived. They had fought impossible battles and won wars that everyone said could not be won. "Even if I can find some of them, they won't get there in time," Kate said. "The outer rim is weeks away by the fastest ship." Jake looked at his reflection in the dark window of the storage bay. "Then I'll have to hold the line until they arrive." "Jake, you're one man against an entire fleet. That's suicide." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I swore an oath 30 years ago. I promised to protect human lives. That oath doesn't have an expiration date." Kate sighed. She knew that tone in Jake's voice. He had made up his mind, and nothing would change it. "What do you need from me?" "Contact everyone you can find. Tell them the Ghost Brigade is being reactivated for one last mission. Tell them Jake Morrison is calling in all debts. And if they say no?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Then 2 million people die, and the galaxy learns that humans can't protect their own." After he finished talking to Kate, Jake started working on his computer. He had to warn the colonies about the coming attack. But he could not send a direct message without the aliens on the station noticing. He had to be sneaky. Jake sent coded messages through the merchant shipping network. To anyone listening, they looked like routine trade reports. But hidden in the numbers and shipping codes were warnings. He told the colonies that danger was coming. He told them to prepare their defenses and evacuate the civilians if they could. But Jake knew the warnings would not be enough. The colonies were farming worlds and mining stations. They had a few old patrol ships and some defense satellites. They were not equipped to fight a war against the hegemony's battle fleet. The next morning, Jake went back to work as usual. He mopped floors and emptied trash cans. He listened to the aliens talking about their plans. The hegemony fleet was already moving. 300 ships, including the massive Dreadnought Annihilator, the biggest and most powerful warship in the galaxy. Jake had fought against hegemony ships before. He knew how tough they were. Their armor could stop nuclear weapons. Their shields could deflect energy beams that could cut through mountains. And they had thousands of trained soldiers, ready to land on human worlds. But Jake also knew something the hegemony did not know. The Ghost Brigade had never lost a battle. They had never retreated when human lives were at stake. And they had never forgotten how to fight. As Jake pushed his cart down the hallway, he was already making plans. He could not stop the hegemony fleet in open battle, but he did not need to fight them in space. He was already behind enemy lines on the most important space station in the galaxy. From here, he could cause the kind of damage that would make the hegemony think twice about their war plans. Jake Morrison had spent 3 years being invisible. But now it was time to remind the galaxy that some ghosts never really die. Jake Morrison worked all night to turn Storage Bay 7 into his secret command center. He used his janitor access codes to tap into the station's computer systems. Over 3 years, he had learned every pipe, every wire, and every security camera. On Nexus Prime, the aliens thought he was just a harmless cleaner, so they had given him access to everywhere. Jake connected his homemade computers to the station's main network. Now he could see everything that happened on Nexus Prime. He could watch the security cameras, read the message traffic, and monitor the sensor arrays that watched for incoming ships. The aliens had no idea that a human janitor was spying on them from the lowest level of their station. Linda Hayes arrived at the storage bay early in the morning. She carried a toolkit and tried to look like she was just doing routine maintenance work. But her hands were shaking as she looked at what Jake had built. The storage room was full of glowing screens and blinking lights. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls. Red dots showed where the human colonies were located. Green lines marked the routes that spaceships used to travel between stars. And moving across it all was a large cluster of yellow dots that represented the Hegemony Fleet. "My God," Linda whispered. "How did you build all this?" 3 years of collecting spare parts, Jake said. He was sitting at the main computer, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. Nobody pays attention to what a janitor throws away or takes from the recycling bins. Linda looked at the main screen. It showed the Hegemony Fleet moving through space toward the outer rim colonies. The fleet was huge. Hundreds of ships arranged in perfect attack formation. "They're moving faster than we thought," Jake said. "They'll reach the first colonies in 36 hours, not 3 days. Someone changed the plan." Linda felt sick to her stomach. "We have to warn them again." "Already did," Jake replied. He pointed to another screen that showed a list of coded messages. "I sent new warnings through every communication channel I could find, but warnings won't save them. The colonies don't have the weapons to fight that many ships." "Then what can we do?" Jake pulled up a detailed map of Nexus Prime on his screen. The space station was massive, with thousands of levels and millions of rooms. But Jake had highlighted certain areas in red. "We turn the station into a weapon," he said. Linda stared at the map. "What do you mean?" Jake pointed to the station's power core. "Nexus Prime has 6 fusion reactors that provide power for the entire station. If I overload them all at the same time, they'll create a chain reaction. The explosion will tear a hole in space itself. That would destroy the station," Linda said. "And anything within 1,000,000 kilometers," Jake agreed. "Including the Hegemony Fleet when they come here to celebrate their victory." Linda was quiet for a long moment. She was thinking about the 10,000 innocent aliens who lived and worked on Nexus Prime. They were not all bad people. Many of them were just trying to make a living, like the humans. "There has to be another way," she said. Jake nodded. "There is. We evacuate everyone first. But we need a big distraction to get people off the station without the hegemony getting suspicious." Jake's plan was complex but simple. He would create a series of fake emergencies all over the station. Computer viruses would make the life support systems show false warnings. The fire suppression systems would trigger randomly. The artificial gravity would flicker on and off. To everyone on the station, it would look like Nexus Prime was falling apart. "People will panic and head for the escape pods," Jake explained. "The hegemony security forces will be too busy dealing with the emergencies to notice that everyone is leaving. By the time they figure out what's really happening, the station will be empty except for us. And then? Then we wait for the hegemony fleet to arrive and destroy them all." Linda was not sure about the plan, but she could not think of anything better. She started helping Jake prepare the computer viruses and false alarms. She had been a communications officer in the Navy, so she knew how to work with computer systems. As they worked, Jake told her more about his past. He had joined the Terran military when he was 18 years old. He was a good soldier, so they sent him to special training. He learned how to fight in zero gravity, how to survive on alien worlds, and how to kill enemies without making a sound. Eventually, Jake was recruited into the Ghost Brigade. It was the most secret unit in the human military. Officially, it did not exist. The Ghost Brigade handled missions that were too dangerous or too sensitive for regular soldiers. They fought wars that the government could never admit were happening. "We were 12 of the best," Jake said as he worked on the computer. "We could do things that a whole army couldn't do. We saved human colonies from alien raiders. We stopped wars before they started. We made sure that humanity had a place among the stars." "What happened to the others?" Linda asked. Jake's hands stopped moving on the keyboard. Some died in battle. Some retired and disappeared. A few went crazy from the things we had to do. I lasted longer than most, but eventually, I got tired of killing. So you became a janitor? I wanted to be invisible, Jake said. I wanted to live a quiet life where nobody expected me to save the world, but I guess the world had other plans. That evening, Jake put the final part of his plan into action. He needed the hegemony to know that something dangerous was on the station. But he had to be careful about how he revealed himself. Jake was mopping the floor in the council chambers when Ambassador Korvac walked by. Jake pretended to stumble and caught himself against the wall. As he did, his uniform collar shifted slightly. For just a moment, the tattoo on his neck was visible. Korvac's yellow eyes were very sharp. He saw the small eagle and crossed swords tattooed on Jake's neck. The ambassador stopped walking and stared at the old human janitor. Jake quickly fixed his collar and went back to mopping. He acted like nothing had happened. But inside, he was counting the seconds. How long would it take Korvac to remember where he had seen that symbol before? The hegemony kept files on all their enemies. Somewhere in their computers was information about the Ghost Brigade. They had fought against ghost soldiers before and lost ships to them. The eagle and crossed swords was the mark of humanity's most dangerous warriors. Korvac walked away without saying anything. But Jake knew the alien would check his files as soon as he got back to his office. Within hours, every hegemony soldier on the station would be looking for Jake Morrison. Jake finished mopping and returned to Storage Bay 7. Linda was waiting for him with bad news. The evacuation isn't working, she said. The hegemony security forces are blocking the escape pod bays. They're not letting anyone leave the station. Jake looked at the security cameras. Armed hegemony soldiers were stationed at every exit. They were checking identification papers and turning people away. Nobody was allowed to leave Nexus Prime. They know something is wrong, Jake said. Korvac must have identified my tattoo faster than I expected. What do we do now? Jake looked at the screen showing the approaching hegemony fleet. The ships would arrive in less than 24 hours. There was no more time for clever plans or secret evacuations. We switched to the backup plan, Jake said. If we can't save everyone, we'll have to trust that the Ghost Brigade's reputation will make the hegemony think twice. Jake walked over to the communication console. It was time to let the galaxy know that the Ghost Brigade was back in business. He opened a channel on all frequencies and started recording a message that would change everything. Jake Morrison knew they were coming for him. He could see the hegemony security teams on his computer screens. 6 soldiers in black armor were moving through the maintenance tunnels. They carried plasma rifles and stun grenades. They thought they were hunting an old janitor who might know some military secrets. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. Jake had spent 3 years learning every inch of Nexus Prime. He knew which corridors led to dead ends. He knew which air vents connected to which rooms. He knew where the emergency power cables ran and which doors could be locked from the inside. The security team leader was a hegemony captain named Razek. He had fought humans before and thought he knew what to expect. Humans were supposed to be slow and weak. They relied on technology instead of natural strength. Razek expected to capture the old janitor without any trouble. Jake waited in maintenance tunnel C7. It was a narrow passage that connected the water recycling plant to the air purification system. The tunnel had only one way in and one way out. The perfect place for an ambush. Jake had taken off his blue janitor uniform. Underneath, he wore a black bodysuit that he had kept hidden for 3 years. The suit was made of special fabric that could stop knife cuts and small bullets. On his belt were tools that looked like normal maintenance equipment. But Jake had modified them into weapons. The first hegemony soldier came around the corner carefully. His rifle was raised and ready. To fire. He expected to see an old man with his hands up, ready to surrender. Instead, Jake Morrison exploded into motion. The soldier died before he could pull the trigger. Jake's modified wrench hit him in the throat with perfect precision. The alien dropped his rifle and fell to the floor without making a sound. The second soldier heard the noise and came running. He saw his dead teammate and tried to shout a warning. But Jake was already moving. A cleaning chemical bottle exploded in the soldier's face. The liquid was not cleaning fluid anymore. Jake had turned it into acid that burned through the aliens. Helmet and skin. The third soldier managed to fire his weapon. The plasma bolt scorched the tunnel wall where Jake had been standing a second before. But Jake had rolled behind a pipe and was already moving again. His mop handle, reinforced with metal cables, took the soldier's legs out from under him. The alien hit the floor hard and did not get up. The remaining 3 soldiers retreated back down the tunnel. They were shouting into their radios, calling for backup. But Jake was already gone. He had disappeared into the ventilation system like a ghost. Captain Rozak was angry and confused. He had lost 3 soldiers to 1 old human. That was not supposed to happen. He called for more troops and started sealing off the maintenance levels. But Jake Morrison knew the station better than anyone. He could move through areas that the aliens had forgotten existed. In Storage Bay 7, Linda Hayes was frantically working at the computers. She was monitoring the station's communication systems and the approaching hegemony fleet. The ships would arrive in 18 hours. The first human colonies were already under attack. "Jake, they're jamming all the communication channels," Linda reported over the radio. "I can't send any more warnings to the colonies." Jake's voice came back through static. "It doesn't matter. The warnings won't save them now. We need to focus on the big picture." Jake was crawling through an air vent above the security control room. Below him, a dozen hegemony officers were coordinating the search. They had put the entire station on lockdown. No one could enter or leave any section without permission. Jake dropped a small device through the vent grating. It looked like a piece of trash, but it was actually a computer virus that he had built from spare parts. The device attached itself to the security network and started spreading through the station systems. Within minutes, doors started opening and closing randomly. Elevators stopped working. The artificial gravity flickered on and off in different sections. The hegemony soldiers were getting confused and frustrated as their own systems turned against them. Jake used the chaos to reach the main communication center. It was heavily guarded, but the guards were dealing with false alarms and system failures. Jake slipped past them and broke into the communication control room. Inside the room, Jake found the master communication console that connected Nexus Prime to the rest of the galaxy. This was how he would send his message to every ship and station. Within 100 light years, Jake sat down at the console and started entering override codes. His fingers moved quickly across the controls. The Ghost Brigade had taught him how to hack into any computer system in the galaxy. Even alien technology followed certain basic rules. Warning lights flashed as Jake took control of the communication array. Somewhere in the station, technicians were probably trying to figure out what was wrong. But it would take them time to trace the problem back to this room. Jake activated the recording system and looked directly into the camera. For 3 years, he had tried to look like a harmless old man. Now he let his true self show through. His back was straight, his shoulders were square, and his gray eyes were as cold as space itself. "This is Commander Jake Morrison, Terran Special Forces, 7th Battalion," he said in a calm, steady voice. "Ghost Brigade Actual. Nexus Prime is now under my protection. Any hostile action against this station or the human colonies will result in immediate and total retaliation." Jake paused and stared directly into the camera. He wanted every alien who saw this message to understand exactly what they were dealing with. "You know what we are capable of," he continued. You have seen what happens when you threaten human civilians. The Ghost Brigade has never lost a war, and we have never abandoned our people. This is your only warning. Withdraw your forces now, or face the consequences. The message was transmitted on all frequencies at maximum power. It would reach every ship in the sector within hours. The Hegemony fleet would receive it long before they reached the human colonies. As soon as Jake finished recording, alarms started blaring throughout the communication center. The Hegemony soldiers had found him. Jake could hear boots running down the hallway outside. Jake activated the final part of his plan. He overrode the safety systems on the station's fusion reactors. If the Hegemony wanted to take him alive, they would have to do it very carefully. One wrong move and the entire station would explode like a small star. The door to the communication room burst open. 6 Hegemony soldiers rushed in with their weapons ready. They surrounded Jake but did not fire. Their captain had told them to take the human alive if possible. Jake slowly raised his hands above his head, but he was not surrendering. His right hand was holding a small device that looked like a television remote control. It was actually a detonator connected to the reactor overload system. "Gentlemen," Jake said politely, "I hope you're feeling lucky today." The Hegemony soldiers looked nervous. They could see the countdown timer on Jake's device. The reactors were building toward critical overload. In 10 minutes, the entire station would be destroyed. Captain Razek pushed through the crowd of soldiers. He pointed his weapon at Jake's head. "Shut down the reactors, human. Surrender now, and we might let you live." Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I don't think so, Captain. You see, I've spent 3 years on this station. I know every bolt and wire and circuit. If you shoot me, my hand will relax and this button will activate. If you try to take the detonator away from me, the same thing happens. If you try to leave the room, well, let's just say the door is rigged with some surprises." The captain's scaled face was turning darker with anger. "What do you want?" "I want you to call your fleet and tell them to turn around," Jake said. "I want them to leave the human colonies alone. And I want safe passage off this station for all human civilians." "Impossible. The Hegemony does not negotiate with terrorists." Jake's smile grew wider. "Then I guess we're all going to die together." "The Ghost Brigade never retreats, Captain. We go down fighting, and we take our enemies with us." The countdown timer showed 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Somewhere in space, the Hegemony fleet was receiving Jake's message and trying to decide what to do. The fate of 2 million humans hung in the balance, and time was running out. The Hegemony fleet stopped moving through space. 300 warships that had been racing toward the human colonies suddenly slowed down and came to a complete halt. On the bridge of the massive dreadnought Annihilator, Admiral Korath stared at the message that Jake Morrison had sent across the galaxy. Admiral Korath was old and experienced. He had fought many wars and destroyed many worlds, but he remembered the Ghost Brigade. Every military officer in the galaxy knew their reputation. They were the humans who never lost, never retreated, and never left their people behind. "Sir, we're detecting massive power readings from Nexus Prime," his science officer reported. "Their fusion reactors are building toward overload. If they explode, the blast will destroy everything within 1,000,000 kilometers." Admiral Korath looked at the tactical display. His fleet was exactly 800,000 kilometers from the station. If the reactors exploded now, they would be caught in the blast zone. 300 ships and 2 million Hegemony soldiers would die in the explosion. "How many humans are on that station?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. Maybe 50 or 60. But the Ghost Brigade has a history of sacrificing themselves to protect human civilians." Admiral Korath had read the classified reports. At Proxima Station, one Ghost Brigade unit had held off an entire invasion fleet for 6 hours. They had fought until the last man was dead, buying time for civilian ships to escape. At New Geneva, 3 ghost operatives had destroyed a hegemony siege fleet from the inside. They had blown up their own ship to complete the mission. "Sir, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked. Admiral Korath was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about the 2 million humans on the Rim colonies. They were farmers and miners and shop owners. They had never hurt anyone. But the hegemony high command wanted them dead because they were growing too strong. "Pull the fleet back to minimum safe distance," Admiral Korath ordered. "Send a message to Nexus Prime. Tell them we want to talk." On Nexus Prime, Jake Morrison still held the detonator in his hand. The countdown timer showed 6 minutes and 42 seconds. "Captain." Razek and his soldiers were standing very still, afraid to move. Everyone in the room knew that one wrong step would kill them all. Linda Hayes was monitoring the communications from Storage Bay 7. She could see the hegemony fleet on her sensors. The ships had stopped moving and were backing away from the station. "Jake, the fleet is withdrawing to safe distance," Linda reported over the radio. "They're requesting communication," Jake smiled grimly. "Put them through." A holographic image appeared in the communication room. It showed Admiral Korath standing on the bridge of his flagship. The alien admiral looked tired and angry, but also respectful. He knew he was talking to one of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. "Commander Morrison," Admiral Korath said. "I am Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Third Fleet. I believe we need to discuss the current situation." "There's nothing to discuss," Jake replied. "Turn your ships around and leave the human colonies alone. That's the only deal I'm offering. You are one man holding one space station. You cannot threaten the entire hegemony." Jake's finger moved closer to the detonator button. "Watch me." The countdown timer showed 5 minutes and 18 seconds. Admiral Korath could see the determination in Jake's eyes. This human would really destroy the station and everyone on it. The Ghost Brigade had never been known for making empty threats. "Even if I wanted to cancel the operation, I don't have that authority," Admiral Korath said. "The orders came from the Hegemony High Command. I'm just following orders." "Then you better call your bosses and get new orders," Jake said. "Because in 5 minutes, this station becomes a very bright star." Suddenly, new contacts appeared on the sensor screens. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace near Nexus Prime, but these were not hegemony vessels. They were human ships, old and battered but armed for war. The first ship was the Vengeance, Admiral Kate Sullivan's personal command vessel. It was an old battlecruiser that had seen action in a dozen wars. Behind it came the Reaper, piloted by Commander Rick Barnes. Then came the Wraith, captained by Major Lisa Chen. One by one, the legends returned from retirement. The surviving members of the Ghost Brigade had heard Jake's call and come home for one last fight. They brought with them a collection of ships that looked like they had been pulled from a scrapyard. But each vessel was crewed by veterans who knew how to fight impossible battles and win. "Ghost 7, this is Phoenix Actual." Admiral Sullivan's voice came over the radio. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was murder." Jake felt something he had not felt in years: hope. "Good to hear your voice, Kate. What's your status?" 15 ships, all armed and ready. We've got about 300 veterans who couldn't resist one more mission. The odds are still pretty bad, but at least you're not facing them alone." Admiral Korath was staring at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ships were tiny compared to his fleet. The biggest one was smaller than his escort destroyers. But he knew these were not ordinary ships. These were crewed by the Ghost Brigade, the humans who had never lost a war. "Sir, we're outnumbered 20 to 1, his tactical officer said. "We should be able to destroy them easily." But Admiral Korath was not so sure. He had fought the Ghost Brigade before, 30 years ago when he was a young captain. He had watched them turn a hopeless battle into a stunning victory. They fought with a combination of skill, courage, and sheer stubbornness that no other species could match. Jake looked at the countdown timer. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. The fusion reactors were still building toward overload, but now he had options he did not have before. Admiral Korath, Jake said, you have a choice to make. You can fight my friends out there and probably win, but it will cost you at least 50 ships and thousands of soldiers. And even if you win, this station still explodes and takes your fleet with it. Jake paused and looked directly at the holographic image of the alien admiral. Or you can turn around right now and leave the human colonies alone. Call off Operation Cleansing Dawn. Find something else to do with your time. Admiral Korath was thinking fast. He could probably destroy the Ghost Brigade ships, but the cost would be enormous, and the station would still explode. His entire fleet would be wiped out, and the humans would become martyrs that would inspire resistance across the galaxy. What guarantee do I have that you'll shut down the reactors if I withdraw? Admiral Korath asked. You have my word, Jake said simply. The word of a ghost. That meant something in the galaxy. The Ghost Brigade had never broken a promise or failed to honor an agreement. Their reputation was built on absolute reliability. In an unreliable universe, the countdown timer showed 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Admiral Korath made his decision. All ships, prepare to jump to hyperspace. We're withdrawing from this sector. Sir, the High Command will not be pleased, his tactical officer warned. Let me worry about the High Command, Admiral Korath replied. I'd rather face their anger than explain how I lost an entire fleet to a dozen human ships and one crazy janitor. The Hegemony fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. Operation Cleansing Dawn was cancelled. 2 million human civilians would live to see another day. Jake Morrison powered down the reactor overload with 37 seconds to spare. He set down the detonator and raised his hands as Captain Ryzek and his soldiers arrested him. But they did it with the careful respect given to a dangerous enemy. As Jake was led away in chains, he could see the human ships through the viewports. The Ghost Brigade had come home, and the galaxy was a safer place because of it. Jake had spent 8 years in silence, invisible and forgotten. But when his people needed him, the ghost had awakened. The janitor who mopped floors was gone. In his place stood Commander Jake Morrison, defender of humanity and keeper of promises that should never be broken.